Thank you, and welcome to the Future of TV. I'm Maura Kelly, and tonight we're very fortunate to have such an esteemed panel of people who've been working in television in various aspects, in linear and digital, in technology for many years, and who now are actually creating the future of television. As you know, the media and entertainment industry is going through massive innovation. We're seeing broadcasters, we're seeing streaming companies and brands compete and collaborate to create content and experiences and products and deal directly with the consumer. There is a lot of opportunities and trends we're going to talk about today, but as we know, TV as content is never going to go away. It's pretty much just changing platforms, it's changing formats, but the future of TV, many say, is the future. The future of television is more television. So we're going to get into it and see where there's opportunities for people in this room. We'll start with talking about the changing viewing habits of consumers, and we'll get into what's driving that. The technology, the different companies. We'll talk about data. We'll talk about what the broadcasters and content producers are doing to stay in touch. So now I'd like to introduce the panelists. I'll introduce them very briefly, and then they'll tell us a little bit about what they're doing with their company. So let me start with Patrick Connolly, who's Senior Vice President of Programming for AMC Networks and Sundance Global. So Patrick, tell us about AMC Networks and what are you doing in this space right now?
Sure. Hi, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. I work in the international division of AMC Networks. I work with all the international branches that we have all over the world on programming, planning, scheduling, and strategy for AMC Channel and Sundance TV. And we create programming, both scripted and non-scripted, high quality programming for viewers all over the world. And I'm really excited to talk about how people access that programming now. That's changed a lot over time.
Great. And next is Caire, McHugh, who's co-founder and CEO of Axonista. So tell us a little bit about what Axonista is doing.
Thanks, Maura. So yes, I'm Caire. I'm CEO and co-founder of Axonista. We're one of the sponsors of tonight's event. And thank you very much for having us and organising this wonderful event. So we are a technology company. We're based in Dublin. We also have offices in New York, out of Bank of Ireland's wonderful startup lab facility just around the corner from here. And we help companies figure out the future of television and video with things from distribution to audiences on digital, to engaging audiences, and also converting those audiences into customers. So that's broadly what we do. We've been going for about 8 years. So before that, I actually worked in a sports company called Sundance Sports. Some of you may know that. It's an Irish sports broadcaster. So I was part of the team that built that company as well. So I've been on both sides of the content and technology space.
Great. And next we have Mike Rich, who is the CEO of Our Studio and OurCentral.com. And Mike was the former head of AOL Entertainment. So tell us about what's going on at Our Studio.
Sure. Well, thanks, Maura. Thanks for having us. And as Maura said, I'm Mike Rich, and I'm the CEO of Our Studio. We're a collection of brands that focus on Irish America and Ireland-based audiences. And ultimately, what we do is we tell stories to engage people that have deep passions in the Irish American affinity groups and audiences and communities. And we tell those stories through video, through text, through photos. And most importantly then, what we do is we use our technology and the experience of the team that we have assembled to serve the right story to the right person at the right time, in the right context, on the right platform. So that's kind of a mouthful, but really that's the future of where everyone in this room is consuming. It's the future of how we all will consume. So we're doing that, obviously, for audiences. And then we enable our partners to reach those audiences through that engagement. And that's the beginning of our business model, deep engagement, and then the ability to bring authentic messages and brands through that. So that's what we're trying to do there.
Great. We'll hear more about that later. And then, can you hear me? Is my mic on?
Yep.
You can hear me? Yeah. And then we have Dermot McCormack, who is the co-founder of Sneaker Inc. and former president of AOL Oath Studios and EVP of Viacom Digital. Lots of experience. So tell us about Sneaker Inc.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thank you guys all for coming out. They gave me a hard time tonight because I didn't wear my best sneakers because it was like really raining this morning. If you know anything about sneakers, like you really don't want to wear your good ones, or as I used to call them when I grew up, runners. Do there's other runners back home? So anyway, I'm co-founder of a company called Sneaker Inc. And the general idea is it's a global community of the cool kids on the planet, and it's a $55 billion industry. And we really would like to try build the MTV of sneakers. So we don't make sneakers. We think we want to make a youth culture brand that makes content and connects to every cool kid from Dublin to Delhi to Delaware. We made those three up right now, but that's what we're thinking about. Before that, I ran studios and video for AOL. We share a lot of things in common. Worked with Patricia back there, Cablevision, where she is. I ran digital for MTV and all those networks. So definitely seeing a bunch of the evolution of where this business is going. I'm excited to talk about it with you guys tonight.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about the future of television in this business for 15, 20 years, and I think finally now we're here, which is really exciting. And then we have stuff to show, which is even better. Before I start, I do want to welcome some of my colleagues from New York Women in Film and Television who are here. Great to see you, and they are content creators. And also our colleagues from INYC who are also joining us tonight. But we'll start, because what you saw now with the panel is really trends that you'll see within the industry. You've got Patrick at the end, who is a very large international cable entity who is creating amazing content, libraries of content, but who also now is getting into streaming, and he is looking to serve customers in a lot of different ways. So AMC and broadcasters have to get more innovative, and they're building big TV businesses. And you've got Mike and you've got Des, who are going super niche. They're hyper-focusing on communities and brands and going after, it's just more niche. So you're seeing the large players and the smaller players, and they're both going to coexist, and you're going to see a lot more niche OTT over the top, which is the streaming services or an app. You're going to see a lot of them popping up, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what that means. But let's get started and talk about the changing viewing habits of consumers today. Like what are they? We know they're kind of on every screen, but let's go a little deeper. Are they still binging? I don't know. People still binge, but what are they watching? Where are they watching it? Is it the technology? Is it generational things? But what's the lay of the land with the consumer right now? And anybody can start.
I'll start. Are they binging? Yes.
I don't know. Are they still binging?
I think I'd be binging right now if I wasn't here. I'd be home binging, and I love the feeling of binging. It's really I love seeing something, hearing about something, and then when I watch it, going, all right, I'll do one more, and it's insane. And then you don't get any sleep, but you just get so excited about that. And
you remember what happened then.
What? Oh yes, absolutely, yes. And then you can always go back. But growing up, you're always waiting you can only wait till next Sunday night at whatever time for the next episode. And now, I think what's happening, and I kind of work in both sides. I'm from the cable world, and we are having to coexist with Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, and really they certainly are legitimate players that we have to take very seriously and be very aware of. I mean, well, we're way past that. I mean, they're I don't know. You learn a lot when you're in the elevator at your work and the little video screen, which I used to mock, and now I quote it at cocktail parties. Did you know 37% of? But they just said Netflix is now the number one go-to place when you're looking for programming more than cable. That's very sobering for me, but. I think there's an expectation, and I think somewhat generational, that, you know, you've heard about something, you want to just go see it now. You don't know exactly where it is, but you're not going to wait till some time or go to the video store to go rent it. You want to see it now. And depending on how old you are, if you can't find it, then I think you're just going to go steal it, you know, and get it online. And there's a lot of piracy because of that. And internationally, you know, one of the marketing tools for us, you know, has always been, you know, see it at the same time as the U.S., you know, when we are, you know, airing it someplace else, including Asia, you know, which is 12 hours, you know, off. We'd still show it, you know, first thing in the morning, just to have that marketing tool. And then for the Uber fans, they could record it or be up in the morning to watch it. But also we were hoping to cut down some of the piracy, because certainly, you know, we have Fear the Walking Dead, and if it's not at the same time as the U.S., well, you'll just go get it anyway, won't you? You know, so we wanted to have it on our air around the world, and we'd like to simulcast as much as it is possible to do that. But I do think that viewers want to see stuff often and now, and wherever you are in the world, you're not waiting for the whatever UK release of it if you can help it.
Yeah, that's a global problem you have. You know, you need a different strategy for that to cut down the piracy. Didn't think of that. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same thing with happened with music. You know, piracy was the best user experience until Spotify come along and changed all that. You know, so and it is funny because I'm the person who records Game of Thrones in the middle of the night, so I can watch it as soon as possible. But also, you know, because we have Better Call Saul on Netflix, I will stack those. So I won't watch them 1 week at a time. I'll actually stack them and watch 2 in a row. But I won't watch more than that because I won't remember it. So I think the capability to watch things anywhere, everywhere, really is actually real now. We have the infrastructure to support it and actually watch something in a way where it's watchable, because before I think that wasn't really the case. You know, you could try and watch something, but it's like the signal was bad. You know, you go in the subway, it's gone. But we're finally kind of getting our infrastructure in a place where that's actually real now, so you can really play with that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys, and I would say that we all know that convenience, you know, wins, specifically in digital for sure, and hubris type experiences, meaning hoops and, you know, hurdles and passwords and all these different inconveniences kind of, you know, goes by the wayside. That's why you see a lot of the big platforms enable you to share a password if you'd like, because they know it's all about creating that engagement, and that's on a small scale what we try to do, which is let's be the most convenient, accessible storytellers to our audiences, be really specific with it, no windowing at all, which is, I hear, shrinking, as I hear from my colleagues here, and allow them to experience it, as I said earlier in the opening, anywhere, anytime, any platform, and use that to build trust and engaged, I'd like to say, community member. It's not just audience, and then you have the ability to gain that trust and then earn the right to, you know, have a relationship with them that goes deeper than just an engaged viewer, if you would, or an audience member. So that's a little bit how we're looking at it, you know, across the our studio portfolio of brands.
The best thing about going last, I could just summarize everything you guys said.
That's great.
But the question was, you know, is binging still happening? What's happening? Is technology driving this new behavior? Just to echo your thoughts, because they were awesome thoughts. Really, the technology has enabled people to remove, you know, restrictions and friction. Right? So if you think about it, when some of us grew up, it was like you had to wait till next Tuesday for your show, and you couldn't rewind it, and you couldn't pause it, and you couldn't do all this sort of stuff. That wasn't really ideal from a customer perspective, right? So if you think about it, technology has enabled people to really do maybe what they always really wanted to do, which was sit and watch 11 shows of Walking Dead in a row, which I like to do. So I think it's continuing the theme of removing barriers and friction to the experience of consuming content. Now, I do think, I'll just add one other thing, you kind of went on it. I still think a lot of it sucks, honestly. I really think we talk a lot about, oh, this is great future, and honestly, it's still kind of horrible. The reason why television worked was you switched it on and it worked. It was there. And you went up and down. It was pretty simple, and a kid could do it. And now you got it. This is still choppy, right? Like, there's so much stuff on Netflix. it's almost like, it needs to be kind of, I think there's a Spotify moment coming in video where Spotify, in the beginning, it was just every song ever made and it was hard. And we worked in music. And now it's pretty good because there's playlists and it knows what you want. And so I think there's a Spotify moment in coming and consuming television content. It's not there yet. And if I was AMC Networks, I'd be working with Axonista, who I also advise, to solve that problem. So that's your plug. But I do think it sucks. Who thinks it's a great experience? Today, it's still pretty hard, right?
I mean, I think they say, in the old days, they say there's 500 channels and there's nothing on, or I can't find anything. And now we're getting to a point where there's 500 streaming services and I still can't find anything. But I also think there's, what the consumer's doing is they're sort of taking it into their own hands. They used to say it's you're cord cutting. You're cutting your cable bill or your TV bill, but now they're calling it cord shaving. They're kind of shaving their cable bills and they're adding on a lot of streaming services. So they're building their own bundles. But that as well is going to start adding up in costs, because a lot of these streaming services you buy are $4.99, $9.99, and you buy it for a specific show because it's exclusive. So it starts adding up. So I think a lot of people were kind of leaving, saying that the younger people were leaving cable broadcast because the bills were too high, and they were going to Netflix for $9.99, they were going here for $5.99, but now they're all adding up. So that's a trend that we're seeing, and people are aware of that, and it's a dilemma that's going to happen, but that the streaming bill is going to start getting a little bit equal to the cable bill. So that's coming. That's the future. But let's talk a little bit about, because we're talking Netflix a little bit went in. Claire, do you want to say something?
But just on that, when you're talking about streaming services adding up, now once they're just on your credit card bill, you don't notice $4.99 purchases disappearing off every month. But also, like, wasn't it something like 329 million that was the top 10 SVOD apps in the US in Q3 this year? 329 million in revenue. That went up 15% from Q1.
Yeah.
So it's like there's lots of money to be made in niche, at scale, video apps.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to get into that a little bit, because that's where the future is. That's trend. That's where the future is, and that's where there's some opportunity.
You probably know that. I mean, over half the U.S. population has OTT service access and uses it, right? Is that what it is? I was reading, like 51% or whatever.
I think, that's people are moving into the more streaming services. So let's talk about the rise of streaming services, because they say now that we're in the golden age of streaming. 5 years ago, the golden age of television, when the Netflix and the large companies and cable too were spending like $1 million an episode to really create some great drama to get people in. And then you're asking, can they sustain that? Some of them can, Netflix can, but so now we're in the golden age of streaming, and Netflix this year alone is going to spend $8 billion on content. And Amazon and Hulu and Apple, they're spending around $5 billion. So how does that impact the streaming industry? It's obviously growing it, it's more competition. What's it doing to the linear channels? They're jumping in. They're jumping into streaming.
I mean, obviously, companies have to stay relevant, right? Or you die. And I can speak about AMC. We like I said, globally we have many channels around the world. Food channels, sports channels, lifestyle channels, and then big entertainment channels. The jewel in the crown for us is, AMC and the quality programming. And I think, again, programming is key, right? I mean, if all of a sudden there's a show that people have to watch and it's on Netflix, they'll go there. If it's on HBO, they'll go there. If it's on AMC, thank God, they'll go there. But also as a global company, and we're not this massive global company. We're like medium fish. We still have to stay relevant, and so we have 2 OTT services. One is Shudder, which I think it's a very niche one, and I think you guys can guess what it is. So I think it's very well named. It's horror, terror kind of genre, and if you're that kind of person, then we are buying that programming for you, and we're curating it, and it seems to be doing well. Again, the $4.99 a month that you're adding on to your monthly expense to have that programming. And then we also have Sundance Now, which again is more the sort of independent film and independent television series. So we do have these two OTT businesses that we are putting a lot of revenue. It's global. We're in the U.S. and Canada, and we're just launching in New Zealand and Australia. I don't want to make this a plug for it, but I just wanted to kind of suggest in Germany, UK, Ireland, whatever. But
Shudder is available in Ireland, everybody, and the UK.
Shudder is in Ireland and the UK, and so is Sundance Now. But anyway, if we were just muddling along as a cable service and not providing these other opportunities to, and again, we also went into being an international business. We were only in the U.S. and Canada, and that's why we wanted to branch out. But at the end of the day, it's all about quality, having quality programming. I don't think that content will. I think a couple of things we're going to say is content and curation tonight, but. And it'll be a drinking game anytime someone says Netflix, you can take a drink. But
I'm trying not to, but like I said, don't say Netflix too much tonight.
But and we also have for AMC, we have AMC Premiere, and it's you pay again $4.99 if you're an Uber fan of AMC, but you have to have a cable subscription for it, and there you can see The Walking Dead without commercial interruption. We dropped the first episode of The Walking Dead the night before the linear premiere, and it was the #1 subscription night of AMC Premiere for that. We dropped all of the Terror in a oneer, which was really frustrating for us internationally because they dropped the whole thing in the U.S. In one night, and then we still had it, week to week globally. But so those kind of things. Every company is out doing those things. Every company has an OTT service. Every company will have an OTT service. So I think that you have to be quite diversified in this new age to still stay relevant.
Yeah, I think they're saying like by 2022, all the leading broadcasters will have multiple OTT streaming services.
And most of them will fail.
Right.
Okay, we're going to get to that.
I agree.
But I really want to get into your sneaker culture first. Because you were at Viacom MTV, you were there, and there was big budgets. You left them, and now you're dealing with the sneaker culture, which is a $55 billion business. Very hyper-focused, but huge community.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of model, how are you designing it? I've seen some of your shows, and they're available on, where can we see the shows?
irishcentral.com. No, we'll work that deal out later. We've got a bunch of all-now channels. We're working with people like Complex, Vice, so we're building out a bunch of different channels, and we're probably, hopefully going to, I still believe in television, by the way, so hopefully
we all do.
There's still a lot of great money in television.
There
is.
is.
Jobs, so I'll take
But
them.
I just want you to see them because they're so fun and so clever, and you get the passion of these sneakerheads. Can I call them sneakerheads?
Absolutely, yeah.
Sneakerheads.
Yeah. So just to quickly answer your question, the reason I wanted to do it was because we were talking earlier, and I think the future, one way or the other, is about passion verticals. So whether it's you're Irish, or you like dogs, or you like sneakers, or whatever you like, Irish dogs, right? I like that. Big old hands. But it's all about that, and you've got to decide if you're in. So my sort of thesis for many years has been, how do we make money out of content? And that's what I try to figure out. And I think all the big businesses in traditional media are in trouble. That's why I started a sneaker company. And I think you will see how Disney Plus does.
That's right.
And here's the thing, just remember this, if you remember nothing else tonight. If Disney Plus doesn't do it, nobody will. It won't be Shudder, it won't be anybody else. So just to give you an example, and I think your tools will empower them, but I think at the end of the day, it's really hard to justify another $6 for things, right? Netflix is $13 or something, and it's got everything. So we decided we wouldn't launch an OTT channel for sneaker content. And it's not really about sneaker content, it's really about music, sports, and fashion. This is just the entry point, the way MTV started with music videos, but quickly moved into youth culture. So we want to be global youth culture. We want to be multicultural. We want to not be tied to one platform, and we want to be something that every 16-year-old on the planet loves. That's why we started there. And we love content, so we wanted to tell stories. We don't want to start launching an OTT channel because we don't think anybody will pay for it. But what we are trying to do is maybe combine business models. So we're going to launch something that is a sneaker box that comes in the mail, and you get laces, and you get cleaner, and you also get premium video, and you also get access and 10% off Starbucks. So it's true, it's true. and it's called Snickerbox. And we think there's a way of combining content with other services in the new type of subscription going forward. So when Patricia and I worked at Cablevision, we were always trying to figure out ways to add value to subscription services, right, Trish? And then you look at cable today, the cable bundle is unbundling. It's starting to fall apart. So the two main revenue models, sorry for going on, but my life's work, I'll keep going. The two main revenue models of cable or content in the United States are cable revenue and advertising revenue. Both are under an amazing threat, right? So all eyeballs are moving to digital, and if you're not Facebook and Google, you're kind of in trouble. And if you're in cable and you're a smaller cable channel, you're kind of in trouble. So the question is, if you're launching a content brand, how do you make money? You're challenging those things. How do you move into different models? So quickly, OTT is a piece of it, but I would strongly advise anybody who's not Disney or three of the top people to think about different ways they can engage a passionate audience. So if I love your channel and I love Walking Dead, I like that new show you have, Lodge.
Yeah, Lodge 49.
It's a great show. You should watch
Lodge
it.
49.
It's a sleeper, but it's a great show. So I'd like to see youth networks engage me more around the passion as opposed to just paying an OTT fee. So.
Can I add like a slant to Dermot's perspective there from OTT, because we work with all sorts of different companies that have like really small channels, so people who are super niche focused, like Moderator, who we just started working with in Europe, who are trying to save the world through bringing awareness to environmental issues and activate the youth of today by enabling them to donate to those causes or participate in something like clean up a beach. That sort of interaction, which is super cool. To other big companies like QVC, who've been interactive from when they launched, for almost 30 years now. So and we see like everything in between, and the brands that are launching right now on OTT. It's really exciting for me because I think it's a way that you can go direct to consumer that you couldn't before. And it's about what you do with that consumer when you get there. And you can just like launch an OTT service and it's not a smart or interactive service, or you could look at it like, oh, we pay all these marketing dollars to get these eyeballs in the first place. What do we do with them when we have them? And when someone is subscribing to a niche OTT play where they're super engaged in that content, then you can actually go and say to them, you want to be here, here's something extra that I know you're interested in. And it's not just something like it's a vague ad that might have some sort of programmatic thing to it.
It's not just advertising, right?
It's not just advertising, it's way more than that, and it's worth way more.
So, and I want to get a little into, you help companies as well with e-commerce.
Yeah.
So once they're there in the OTT and they're engaged, you're helping them then make the final purchase.
Yeah, so I mean, it can be anything. We talk about engagement, it could be a call to action they can complete, because attention is so hard to get and so hard to keep. When your attention, you have it for like 5-10 minutes and then someone's forgotten about it, But if they're actually watching something that they're engaged with, that they're actually interested in, and you can give them a call to action that they can complete in the one screen, and it's not an annoying experience, that's key. Then that's a great way to actually monetize and maintain a relationship with your audience that you can't do on Facebook. Because if you're on Facebook, then Facebook has a direct relationship with the audience, not you.
That's true. But now with Irish Studio and Irish Central, you were talking about passion, your passion project, passion about sneakers. It's people passionate about their Irish heritage and their ancestry and finding out more about travel. It's like a built-in community. You both have strong built-in communities. And I think going forward, broadcasters, content producers, they need more than content. They need community as well. And I'm seeing more companies even taking it offline. They're doing live events. And they're engaging in all different ways. So you're doing all of that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks. When we were talking earlier, and Dermot used the word tribes, right? So it's really tapping into communities and tribes that are also obviously our audiences. And brand everywhere. So the brand needs to be immersive. It lives obviously digitally, but we do experiential events. So again, we're trying to do a constellation of niche brands. We have Irish Central that focuses on the Irish American diaspora audience. Then we have brands in Ireland like Food and Wine or Tatler, and they're around individual tribes as well. We're not trying to be everything to everyone, right? We want to be something important to, a deep passion vertical. And then we ultimately layer around that video, digital, direct to consumer in their mail if they like a box or a magazine or some other type of souvenir, if you would, in the analog world, which is really important. Obviously, in the sneaker culture, you actually have the analog, piece of gear that's supported by all the digital around that. So we try to really immerse someone into all the experiences they have, and then again earn that trust, which we went back to earlier, because it's really hard to earn trust, keep trust, respect the audience, and then permission-based marketing and advertising, to serve the right messages to folks. And it wasn't said this way earlier, but I'm going to echo it in this way, which is the best advertising is content. And we all talk about that, whether that was the Nike ad that came out, it was a piece of content. It traveled the world with Colin Kaepernick, right? And it was a beautiful piece of content, agree or disagree with it. That's why it had legs and traveled. So again, we try to respect the audience, give them experiential, digital, print products, any other physical products they might want around specific areas that we try not to deviate from. It's a discipline, and we think that's our defense and our opportunity, because you're not competing against the duopoly or the 3 folks or 4 folks that will take 90 cents of every dollar of digital advertising moving forward.
So let's stay with content now, because you mentioned that, and content, I guess, will always be king. We can say that. But what people are saying about the future of TV, they're also saying that there's going to be a glut of content coming. That with all the streaming platforms and broadcasters, there's a glut. So therefore, first of all, how does the consumer find it? What's the discovery like? But also, what are the new programming formats that you're seeing? Because now people are looking a lot on their smaller screens. So what are some new formats that are emerging that you're seeing that are trending?
Well, I wanted to touch on the discovery piece that was mentioned earlier as well, where we do see data where there's paradox of choice. You log on to a streaming service, and what do you do? What do you watch? I think Dermot mentioned earlier where like Spotify started to figure that out in terms of really great algorithms, some human curation, to use the word we said was going to be used a lot tonight. There's an opportunity there. That someone's going to figure out, and there's a lot of tools that are in place for that.
20 trailers and I just not watch anything.
Right. I think the paradox of choice is real. It's scientifically proven that too many choices gets folks stuck, and I think that's an opportunity for some technology and some great human curation is going to do, and it's going to have to be a cross-platform. Because right now you have to log into 3, 5, 7. You probably know the stats on how many services people have on average to see what's happening now, and then to make a choice. That sounds like a lot of work still.
Is anybody doing it right? Any company that you're seeing that's doing it right? A tech company that has potential? Because there is opportunity in the space.
I mean, I like Spotify. I know we talked about it a little bit, but the music industry has paved the way for a lot of the stuff happening in TV. And what I love about Spotify, and I use it all the time, is the Discovery Weekly album or the playlist that I feel ownership of, because I really feel like I've influenced it. And I know that it's an algorithm, but it does seem to actually suggest things to me that are real. I can say no to something and never play me hot chip again.
You know what's really cool about that, though, and I think it's something that we probably hit on, is data is not the thing that's going to drive everything, I believe. So if you look at Spotify, the most popular playlist on there is called Rap Fix, right? And it's hip hop. And Tuma Bassett, who I used to work with, you might work with him, used to curate. So the humans actually curate it, and then they mix it with data from your playlist to give you sort of a good experience. And I think that's a great example of mixing algorithm data with human curation.
Yeah.
And I think the rooms I'm in, everybody gets too caught up too many times in data, and I get tired of it, so I don't know if you feel the same way.
Well, I'd like to, even though I'm out of probably every demo, I think, by now that advertisers care about, and that's another thing we should talk about, because I think my demo, we're living longer, and I think there's a whole opportunity in the, we won't call it AARP, but we'll rebrand it as something. But I mean, there's so much opportunity for people that have kind of fallen out of the, sort of chosen advertiser demos. I think that's a huge group. But anyway, I just went off, sorry. I still am fascinated by how I watch content, and I'm fascinated by how other people get content, absorb content. I'm always asking my friends, well, how did you arrive at that? Or how do you absorb content? Because, in the old days, you come home, you pull out the TV guide, what's on at 8 o'clock, and there you go. But, now there's so many different ways. We're either programming because we're DVRing, or we've got streaming services, or, and again, the younger people, which, the future, so many are watching YouTube, and they have these YouTube people that they follow, or there's all this non-scripted stuff that I don't even know about. And I remember somebody saying that, what this person, I don't remember their name, could sell a watch better to this group than George Clooney, who at the time was this huge, famous movie star, and he's just, like Madonna is becoming more and more irrelevant. It just kills me, But anyway, I think that I just am fascinated by why I'm watching something and how I arrived at it. And quite often for me, and again, I'm not the hippest demo to watch, but because I heard somebody's talking about it on social media, on Facebook or somewhere else, and I notice it with different friends talking about the same thing. They don't know each other, and I'm fascinated by that. And it's funny, Killing Eve, and again, another corporate plug because we're recording this. But Killing Eve on BBC America, which is one of our channels. I was at the TV market, I knew about it. I worked for the company, I knew about it. I didn't watch it, as a consumer. I watched it because I just read about so many different people talking about Killing Eve. How many people watch Killing Eve in this room? Anybody? Yeah, so it's amazing and very binge-worthy. That was the thing. I lost a lot of sleep because of Killing Eve. But I didn't watch it as a corporate guy. I watched it as a consumer because the conversation on social media was so much about that. And then the funny thing about Killing Eve, it's on BBC America, not the biggest channel that everybody goes to for right now for content, unless you're into Doctor Who and you're really into that kind of programming. But that was shown weekly on linear, and it went up in ratings every week. And that never or rarely happens anymore, that just increased in numbers. It was really fascinating to watch, and obviously you got Emmy nominations, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, content, how we arrive at it, I think is and it's going to come. So I do already think there's a glut of programming. I think there's just way, way too much choice. I think it's way overwhelming. And how do we as programmers or as content creators get our stuff out there in front of everybody else? And I think for me, it's a lot about word of mouth, and a lot about getting it on. I don't know. For me, social media, because I do follow
well, social
that.
media. Just social media is. I'm seeing a trend as well. Looking at all the Viacoms and I'm not going to say Netflix, but all the other companies. But what I'm seeing is that they are acquiring new digital marketing agencies that specifically deal with social influencers. And they're kind of going back. People said social influencers are dead. Now they're coming back, that they're alive again. They're more important than ever. I don't know what to believe. But there's company Who Says, and there's Awesomeness TV. So they're putting value again in social media and sharing word of mouth, what to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of coming back full circle, because maybe the data and hyper targeting you with data is not always working. You do need a little bit of the human curation and the data curation. So I think it's an interesting trend to see broadcasters taking on the social media agencies.
About what Dermot was talking about, and not everything's data. I know you're going to get into data, right? I think, but Walter Presents. Do you guys know? Crickets. This guy, he's an Italian guy, and I can't pronounce his last name. And his name is, and he quit his job in the UK. He has a whole block of programming on Channel 4 called Walter Presents, and his first name is Walter, and he's Italian, living in London. And now PBS is now going to have a block of his program in the United States. They just did a big deal, and it's called Walter Presents. And this guy quit his job and just sat at home and watched all this non-English international programming for hours and hours and hours, just tons of it. And it had to be high quality. It had to have some sort of award. It had to have won awards in its own country. It had to be really popular and successful in its own country. And he's now feeding this subtitled programming to English-speaking, UK and now the United States, and it's done really well. And it's a human curation, and he's really like a big deal in this world because he presents. Walter curates.
I actually read an article about that at him coming to PBS. Now that you mentioned that, and I thought it was very interesting, but that's what's bubbling up. I was
so fascinated by him. I stalked him, and I was in Rome at this TV market, and I couldn't get a hold of him, but we're going to meet in London at the Content London. He said he would have a coffee with me. Well, that's what he said. But I mean, I just was so fascinated to meet this guy who just did this very grassroots thing that's kind of a huge deal now. And I thank you for saying it's not all data, because it's kind of true.
I think, to your point, like, first of all, I love that exists, and I'm going to go back to this, but I think people are generally overwhelmed by the amount of information that's coming at them, by the amount of content, the amount of things on social media, by the amount of things they have subscribed to in the last 10 years that are notifying them every 5 seconds, and there's what I see is a trend, particularly in young people, of just kind of saying no to some of that, and unsubscribing from things, leaving Facebook, deciding where their niche sources are, and just being more mindful about the time that they spend with screens in general, and also knowing what the value of their data is, and respecting their privacy as well of that data and the right to it. So that's something that I'm seeing happen more often. That people are just like, you know what, this is too much. I'm going to decide exactly where to put my attention.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a backlash. I mean, Tim Cook is out there speaking and being very vocal, the head of Apple, and he's talking about that we're all under surveillance, and he's really being the voice of consumers, I guess. And then with GDPR, we're all hoping that comes to the U.S. pretty soon. But yeah, so data is not going to be the end-all, be-all, but it's still valuable. But so let's just talk a little bit about advertisers, because I think, they say the TV business is the advertising business as well. And advertising is down in linear television, but it's up in digital. It's still a $70 billion industry. Is that in the U.S. or worldwide?
U.S.
In the U.S., $70 billion. So it's still huge. There's still money to be made. And big screen TVs, believe me, are not going away. It's still the most watched screen in the country. But with the data now, you're seeing a lot more of hyper-targeted advertising. You're seeing advertising agencies working again with creative media companies, digital agencies, to create more branded content. So it doesn't look like an ad, but it's entertaining. So there's a lot of growth in that area. I'm wondering, when you're dealing, Dermot, with all these sneaker brands, you're dealing with a lot of brands. Are you doing branded content yet? Is it a form of branded content? Where do the advertisers come in?
Yeah, we're working on a thing with Nike right now.
Okay.
It's an animated thing, just launching a new shoe with a designer called Jeff Staple, and we're doing an animation. One of my favorite shows we do is called The Come Up, and everybody talks about their favorite shoe story. So if you don't know much about sneakers, everybody that's into them has like the time when they got the Jordan 3s, or so we animate it, and we're starting to work with NBA players.
I've actually seen that, and it's
pretty cool.
Hysterical.
I want to get Obama on it. Like, that's my goal. So sometimes you say, if you say stuff, the universe helps you manifest. So help me manifest. But he'd be great, wouldn't he? Obama on it.
He would be great, because he loves basketball.
Yeah,
He loves
he's
for sneakers when he's wearing basketball.
So we're doing a show with Nike, not show, but how we look at branded content, and I hate that word. So it's terrible. But
Sorry, what word would you use?
I think it's just storytelling. So if you do it right, over time, this is a huge trend you're going to see, and there's several businesses I'm involved in with this, which is that this Gen Zers are the people coming up behind the millennials, and they don't differentiate. They just don't. And when we look forward to advertising, we can forget about interrupt marketing, we can forget about ads, we have to think about weaving stories inside of stories. And that's, I think Nike are one of the best brands in the world doing that. You think what they did with Caire, whether you agree or not, genius marketing, I think. and they're weaving a story and a stance and a position inside of a message. And that may seem complicated to people who grew up with ads, but so I think the future of advertising is a seamless mixture where the millennials were the first generation that sort of didn't mind people being in ads, and the next generation are going to sort of, there's no difference. As long as you tell a good story and you stand for the things I stand for. So that's where I think it's gone, and that's what we try to work on our good days.
Fully agree with that question. And I think our partners are looking at us more, yes, they want to advertise their product ultimately, but really we're too niche to go after scale type of advertising campaigns. So we really try to approach our partners with solutions to meet their needs. So we're listening to them, and then we're coming up with creative ideas and executions, whether that be video or other forms of storytelling, that ultimately weave their message in a true, authentic way. Everyone knows when it's not right. Everyone in this room does. Every one of our consumers would know that too. So that's the line we try to use. And occasionally, you have to say no to something because it's not going to work for the long run.
I'm going to wrap it up soon so we can take some questions from the audience. But I wanted to touch on interactive television a little bit because now it's here. It's here, and there's some people doing some interesting things in it. And Claire, you might have some examples. I know you like Mosaic.
I do like Mosaic.
So tell us a little about Mosaic for the people who don't know what that is and how it's interactive, why it works.
Well, it's Steven Soderbergh's show, which was interactive, and you could really follow the story from any point in the story. And it's an incredibly complicated thing to put together, and not an inexpensive thing to put together by any means. But it is just approaching storytelling from a different way, using technology to help make that story better. So it's basically you can kind of enter the story at one point. You'll get to the eventual outcome at some point, but you can follow a particular character or a plot line of that character to get there. That's one example of a very interesting thing. There's tons of other types of things like play along shows and quizzes and things like that, but also like choose your own adventure things, which Netflix is really investing in.
Yes, drink.
Yes, I would like a drink.
Okay, we will. But they are doing that, and I think people have tried that before for many years, and they just didn't work. It seems to be that they're getting established now as they're credible. They work well. They're engaging.
It really is. I mean, it's about telling a story and doing it well. You can't skip on it. You have to really put the effort in. And there's a lot of experimentation happening in the space at the moment. But one thing I wanted to say about the advertising thing was that something I read today about Foursquare, and they're getting into attribution on linear TV for ads because they have tons of data of where people are going to shops, and they're going to try and match that up with when ads were played on linear, which I think is actually just going to expose the fact that there's no relation between those two things at all. But I did think that was a very interesting way for them. I'd be excited to see what happens there.
So let's take some questions from the audience, and I think we have some folks with microphones. But John, you're right here, and we can probably hear you.
Sure. Looking at the title of the topic here, multi-screen universe, how about the relationship between the big screen TV and this screen and all the other little screens in between, as far as how they interact, how they augment, how they distract, how they add value, how they give you more data to work with? Somewhere in there.
Well, I know, a long time ago, I thought I saw somebody watching some video on a phone. It was a long time ago, and I sadly have to admit that I was like, that's insane, who would ever do that, and it's amazing that you adapt to whatever size screen you have where you have it at the time, and it's so possible to watch, full programming on an iPhone. I do it all the time, and I'm in a book club, and I read all my books on the iPhone now because I'm on the subway, and it's a pain to pull an iPad out or a book out. It's a pain to pull a book out, right? So I just read everything. I've adapted to that screen, and I watch tons of stuff, and I read tons of stuff on that. But the evil thing for me is, you sit home, and remember we used to come home and we worked all day, and we'd come home to relax and watch the television and just, be like this. And now I find, because I'm such an addict, I find it so passive, and it drives me nuts that I'm itching to, I need to be interacting somehow. And so then I'm on my computer watching television and being social media, and I'm either commenting on if it's some live thing, but most often I'm somewhere else. And I was watching Westworld, which is not an easy show, right? And I was on Facebook, because I'm old, and I looked up and I was like, oh my God, what happened? Because I was so, I think most people are lying when they think remember those people that are texting, and it's like, I'll wait till you're done. They're like, no, I'm listening to you. They're not listening, I'm sharing too much of my personal life, but it's it's a great question, because there's so many screens that we try to use. I just don't think we do a very good job of being. But I think the screens are very adaptable. We can absorb content on any size, any TV, anywhere.
As long as it's consistent. I think that's the key, right? Because you want a consistent experience from one to the next. That was, I'm going to say again, Netflix. But when I fell in love with that was when I was watching something. I think I was cooking in the kitchen and I was watching some movie, can't remember what it was. But then I finished, I was going to eat, and I sat down and I was able to play it at exactly the same point on a different device. And I was like, that's nice,
How about interacting with the content? Like, there's something on and you're sort of interacting with it or with the community.
Mm-hmm.
When it's live, I think when it's live, we're seeing that's the water cooler in real time. With the on-demand world, that's harder, right? Because it's all asynchronous. But I think you see a big engagement spike around live, whether that's sport or some type of awards or some type of other affinity live broadcast.
Or even any kind of lean forward thing where you're not sitting back trying to understand what's happening in Westworld, which is hard. Or you want to find out more about the universe, and
right.
That's where it works in on demand. But
Yeah, we used to do the VMAs, and when Beyonce would come out, obviously, and announce something, that'd be a big thing. I don't think if you interact on a phone and you watch a television screen, you do either well. And I think there's two things. That's a great question, but I think where it's going to go is if you look at the world of gaming, that's where you can tell really how interactivity is going to happen. So when you touched on earlier, that's been happening forever. Well, there's a big difference what's happening in the world. And gamers have become a reality, and that's true interactive content. And it's headsets, and you're not looking at screens, and you're in a community doing a thing, and you're participating in the story. So two things, I believe. Gaming will lead the way. So if you ever told me years ago that my teenage sons would be watching other people play games, I wouldn't agree with you, but they do, crazy. And the second piece is, as we start to see the build, and it'll take a while, but augmented reality will start to change. We won't really view, this is my prediction, we won't really view the world in terms of screens. We just won't. We'll just view it in terms of what you're doing at the time. And that's going to take a minute, but if you look at what gamers do, they have headsets on, they're immersed, and they may even have, augmented reality glasses on over time, but that's where I see it.
VR, right? I mean, you're talking about VR, okay.
Or AR or whatever.
Whatever, yeah, right, because we didn't even talk about that tonight.
No, I had it down here, but I said we were running out of time. But that really is how companies
That's a separate panel.
It's a separate panel, but that's really how
future
media
AR.
companies can differentiate themselves and really connect differently with the audience. We didn't get into that, but that is a whole other
But
level.
also, it's quickly the interactive, when you're talking about live events like the VMAs or the Oscars or sports, Twitter, people are tweeting out, you can be part of a water cooler. I do a lot of Twitter, you're making Twitter comments and following that.
But just staying with John a little bit, when we talked about the different screens, I did ask about what are the new programming formats that are coming up because of all the different screens, and we didn't really answer that. But again, I saw something on the BBC, there was a big announcement 2 weeks ago, they were creating shorts or something. I thought, what's so newsworthy about that? But what was it? I mean, was it they were just creating shorter little formats for mobile devices? I didn't quite get it. I should have read the article. But
Well, there's the thing about Jeffrey Katzenberg got that huge, he got a huge amount of money. He's going into creating short form programming for mobile devices.
well, he's got his own company called New TV.
Right,
New
New
TV
TV, that's
is his
exactly
big
what it is.
only $1 billion industry.
Yes, right.
So that was a story. He's creating all these shorts for his new business, and they will be able to see on any screen, and the format is just because people have shorter attention spans, they're shorter, quicker, faster, made with possibly leading directors?
I would argue though that the short form isn't made just because attention spans are shorter. Now with the advent of the technology in your pocket, now you have new moments in time to reach people where they couldn't be reached prior, right? So if it's a commuter, you have that moment to reach someone now, and it could be a 5-minute commute, it could be an hour-long commute, so you can program to the micro moment of that behavior.
You know what else?
Tell me.
Not every story is 22 minutes long,
Mhm.
and not every story is 100 minutes long. Who says a television show had to be a half an hour? Who's good going with that, right?
The business
So-
model, right?
Well, it was the limitations of
Dictated,
technology,
right.
and it was a business model. It was some person in 1947 decided that's what it was because the length of the mic or something. But if you think about it, and I asked the director on the show that you sponsored one time that question, he said, well, not every story. Every story has a different length, and we now have the ability to tell a 1-minute story, a 10-minute story, a 100-minute story, a 1,000-minute story. One of the things I like about that show, I mean, our network, Lodge, is that it's a really detailed character story that you just wouldn't have seen anywhere else, and nobody would have. But it goes on, and they develop it, so that's interesting. And then some stories are a minute, they really are.
But then some of the ones that are just made for binging, like all those murder mystery ones, they're like 10 episodes or 12. They don't need to be 10 or 12 episodes, they could be 3. And I could tell the story in those 3 episodes.
Sure.
They're hooking you in, they're hooking you in.
Totally.
Who else has a question? You have a question? Brad?
Yeah, I have a question. More for Patrick. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad, for doing this tonight.
You're welcome.
Nobody ever thanks the director.
My pleasure, my pleasure. When I do a lot of binge watching myself, and nowadays when you pause, you can see on a timeline the characters that are actually playing the roles in specific shows. And you were talking about going on Facebook. Lots of times I like to Google and find out more about those characters while I'm watching the show. Why don't shows have that aspect in the show itself of being able to do 2 things at once?
I think that'll happen. I think that it'll be interactive. They always talked about when you're watching a Friends episode, this is an old comment, but you liked Rachel's dress, you should be able to click on it and be able to purchase it. And I think that kind of stuff, and also be able to find out right there on the screen. I think that eventually the TV screen and the computer screen, it's going to be one big experience, and you'll be able to touch it and pause it and click on it and find out who that actor is. And absolutely, I think that's where we would head if there's a demand and an expectation for that.
Yeah, but that's happening already. Like we've been doing that with KBC for 5 years, and it's like, that's very. That's obviously they're selling, and that's what you're there to do.
Right.
But like the potential of that is
huge.
Yeah, and I think they do it on Amazon.
And it doesn't cost you anything because you, like we were talking about, you just hit buy and it just somehow buys it and it comes to your house, and I guess there's a bill somewhere.
So any other companies doing it well besides QVC?
Scary.
Like Brad is talking about a certain format. Any companies doing well coming out of Europe that it's kind of like a TV overlay? You talk about TV overlay, so you've got little windows.
So we did it with TV3, and then our Virgin Media, we did something called Showpal in 2013 and 14, which was all that stuff. And it was second screen, so you could see play-along experience for Champions League. You could we had a fashion show called Expose where you could actually buy the dresses and things that are being featured on the air. There was also a Twitter feed in there that was all sorts of other context around it. It was really good. It went down really well. And some shows worked much better than other shows. Soap operas did not work at all. It was the same stuff and the same people all the time. Play-along quiz shows worked really well. The fashion shows worked really well, especially because we enable them to be, really interactive with the audience because they were live, and you could ask the audience what kind of fashion show they wanted to see at the end of the program, and then play it, that kind of stuff. Or win the presenter's outfit, which was really cool too.
So that's the technology companies innovating, working with the broadcasters, and really helping them be more interactive. So there's companies in a unique position to make all of these companies interactive. Anybody have another question? Tony?
What about gambling? Do you see, maybe not America, but in Asia and stuff like that, gambling's more and more. You're watching a game, you want to bet on whatever. Do you see gambling becoming interactive? Do you see that becoming a major form?
It's already happening. And if you look at New Jersey, they just really changed the laws where you can start to do gambling. So that's a huge part of it going forward. And if you talk about interactive television, like that's a killer app, I believe. I remember when I was younger, my dad used to leave money at the bookies and watch the horse race. He would call up, so he was away ahead of the game, and I direct account. He was way ahead of his time, but yeah,
right?
no, but that's a reality, Tony. Like, it's already started. Like, there's an Irish company that has a FanDuel.
Yeah, FanDuel.
Yeah, and they've already launched a bunch of services because New Jersey is one of the first states to lessen the gambling laws. So that's a reality, and I think once the states see the tax dollars they can bring in, so I think that's a killer app, right, of interactive TV. It's a whole vertical we should focus on.
Well, we actually did it in with Champions League in that app that I was talking about, show called with Betfair. Yeah.
You'll see more of it, sounds like. You'll see more of it. Connor.
But that might go to shows where you're betting on the outcome of, America's Got Talent and stuff like that. Well, even so, right? Like, I don't know, the Game of Thrones guy is going to die, but I can see that happening because all these shows need to generate new forms of revenue.
We touched on niche television on a couple of occasions during the presentations. Would you consider Irish TV and the failure of that as a niche television station as indicative of the difficulties that niche channels face? And do you think there is a market for a dedicated Irish television to appeal to a global diaspora of 74 million? It's probably Mike who I'm going to put on the spot with that one.
I think that's about distribution. We talked about content is king. Distribution is key. So I think it's the way it's distributed and how it's bundled. We have all free content and free storytelling for folks. So I think there's an opportunity to connect to the global diaspora through a great bundle selection of content. I think it's free at this point. I wouldn't say it's a paid service unless you did some type of sports and things like that and bundled in. So I do think it is there, but I think it's the distribution as it relates to in your pocket, in AR, in OTT, on social. If it's ubiquitous brand, I do think the audience will be able to find it and engage with it and then be supported through commerce and advertising.
But staying with the niche a little bit, because you mentioned there's going to be a lot more niche channels popping up now. I mean, we've seen craft beer. You can have the craft beer channel for $4.99. There's something when announced. There's these two husband and wife couple who rebuilt homes, and they have all kinds of lines. They're starting their own OTT channel. I mean, anybody with the right money can start an OTT channel. But Dermot, you mentioned most of them will not make it. Did you say that?
Yeah.
So yeah, why? Again, because there's for planning, not business model.
It's pretty straightforward. You echoed it. So one is just getting attention. So in a universe of 1 billion channels, it's just hard to break through. And it's hard for, when I worked for MTV, it was hard for them to break through. That was MTV. And then on the other side, you've got a bunch of YouTubers who, guess what, already have very successful OTT channels that have 100 million subscribers to their OTT channel. So you've got kids with an iPhone getting 20 million subscribers, and they can afford to do that. But anytime you put money into programming, it's going to be difficult. So I think the revenue models are really hard. All digital advertising is moving into places like Google and Facebook, so it's hard to make money. So I like my model, which is find niche is a bad word, but find a tribe. But then, I was going to say what you were saying, don't just serve them the tribe, because most people don't just define themselves as sneakerheads or Irish, they like classical, we've got all sorts of things. That's a good organizing principle.
Sure.
So kind of enter in through a passion point and then build up through the vertical.
That's right.
And I think those ones that can allow you to get the different business models will win and continually try to provide value to someone's attention, as Caire mentioned, right? Like provide value. But I think tribes, so when you think about OTT channels, anybody that's on the internet is an OTT channel. And anybody's making videos is an OTT channel. So it's not just, hey, something bought cricket rights and they have an OTT channel. All the YouTubers are OTT channels. So the question is, do you have an audience that you can deliver something unique to? And you look at the music industry, which is near and dear to my heart, there's a lot of bands who just make money by sort of saying, we're never going to have a hit record. We're just going to tour, sell merch, and we found a way of making a living from keeping 100,000 people happy.
That's amazing.
So I think if you're in that niche, just make that vertical happy. And if you're broad, you better be Disney.
Yeah.
Right.
I think also, I mean, think of it as a consumer. You're asking me, I gotta pay my cable bill now, and I gotta have my Amazon. I know the entry drug for that was the free delivery free. But Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, and then we're asking you to do Sundance Now, Shutter, blah, 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 blah. One, I can't afford all of that, you know, and everything's just $4.99 a month, but it really does add up. And then I have no time to watch all of that, so eventually I'll drop. And then we were talking about this another time, but Filmstruck, did anybody have Filmstruck? I mean, it's amazing, right? That was the most dedicated sort of niche community, you know, turn classic movies, classic films. So if you love that, then Filmstruck was your person. And I read a lot of people talking about that on social media, and then Warner Brothers shut it down. And I know that they're going to start their own, you know, Warner Brothers Plus or whatever, OTT, and some of that will end up there. But that's I guess a failed business in some ways, and that was a successful niche OTT service. So I agree, it's just going to be really interesting to see who survives, because there's no way that you can sustain all of them.
It'll be interesting to see. But I think if we look at Disney Plus, just keep an eye out for them. They're just announced that they are spinning off, and someone said if Disney can't do it, or you know, no one can do it. And I think they're really going to compete very heavily with Netflix. But well, it's curious to see what happens between the two of them, because there'll be some big wars.
They're taking all the Fox and Disney.
They're taking all their programming off Netflix, so that's gonna.
Star Wars.
And
That's
then they'll own
Marvel.
60% of Hulu as well.
Right,
And
right.
they- and
Bob
do.
Iger will then own the majority share of Hulu and have a new service. So, but I think this is a game for the 5 or 6 global big
Right.
players,
Mm.
and everybody else has to figure out their own way, I think.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Until I just heard that last volley, I had a very clear question, and now I'm not sure I do, but I was drawing these strong parallels between big data and alternative data and trying to find alpha and what's happening in television, in media these days. And you might say, wow, you know, he has a great sense of the obvious, but it seems like production value has really increased. Right, but finding the programs where production value and the quality of actors, the writing, you know, were much more critical. It used to be that we could watch a movie and we could always count on the sequel being terrible, but the sequel would usually generate more revenue than the original, right? But now it's like I'm always searching for something that I feel like is really about quality programming, and I might watch something for a moment and then no. And then I would find that thing that I would binge watch. And that might be across 4 or 5 different channels, but I'm really seeking quality. So is alpha in this case, as it pertains to big data, is that where many people that work as data scientists, you know, they say that a lot of it's curatorial, really trying to find the value in all that data would be 80% janitorial work, right? Like searching and then trying to find that bit that really is of quality. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think that are we entering into now, you know, a long season of people that are just really seeking great content? And I love this comment of, you know, stand for what I stand for. You know, young people, even in the professional world, like young people really care about values, making contribution, doing things that matter. And if you can align that, then it's very powerful. But I know that's maybe I hit too many categories, but I was just
So
curious.
what was the question again? The question?
So the question really is content the value, the production value in content the differentiator? Is that the thing that really is going to give you the competitive edge? Or is it producing something that is really aligned with the likes of you?
I would say it's the emotional connection to the storytelling. Production value definitely matters for sure, but some of the largest viewed things across the entire web ecosystem have the least production value, but the most engagement. So there's a permutation, but if it doesn't reach someone's heart and to what they're passionate about, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. That's what I would say.
This sounds obvious, but I'd like to always go back to the idea that you know, humans have processed learning through stories for as long as humans have been evolving. So it's a very, very old thing for this genus we call humans. And technology is a relatively new thing. So any version of technology going forward involves humans' connection with a story. And I do completely agree with what you said. I think a future storytelling, a future marketing and advertising is people taking stands and standing for things and representing things. And it goes back to that tribal connection. I do think you're already sort of seeing it in the world where people are gathering around these tribes for good and for bad. But my advice is, if you make anything, you know, make something that has a good story and has value. So whether you're doing interactivity, make it work someone's while. Not just for the sake of just clicking on something. And if you're trying to make a movie or a television show or a 2-minute sneaker show, just reward someone for their attention. So I think the age-old, you know, and this is an Irish thing, and we're great storytellers, but at the end of the day, it's about story, I believe. Now, there's a lot of hard things to get your story out there, but if you don't start with that, there's very little things that have gone crazy that have been really crap. Really, there's not a lot, except for, you know,
They have to
most
be
popular.
very, very bad. They're so bad. They're really good.
But I like the way you hit on the thing about standing for stuff. I think that's really important.
All right, so we're gonna.
Well, can we, sorry, this lady had,
Oh.
to ask it. Nobody will ask a question. She was trying so hard.
Hi, the only lady who's standing up here, Agatha Melvin there. Amazon is now moving into Long Island, and basically they have created their model by offering their services for free so they can learn off other people.
I should have bought that apartment in Long Island City.
Yeah, well, never mind. Well, just gets my point in terms of Google, YouTube in particular. It's very interesting how it has evolved now from basically doing more OTT. And I'm curious in terms of the affiliates, and you've got, you know, a whole range of Irish diaspora here in front of me. And I also have a question for the data science lady. What new trend have you started to notice in terms of the numbers cross-correlating with what new trend coming out, if any? Have you come across anything?
I'm not a data science lady.
Nope.
Okay. You collect the numbers. That's sort of the assumption I was making, that you observe.
No technology. We take technology, so we don't.
Okay, just
Yeah.
basically technology. Okay, because that's okay.
So we're not on the data side.
All right, one
Okay,
question.
perfect.
What's the question?
Well, then my other question then would be in terms of the way Google Tube, the YouTube has started to create their affiliates. I'm curious as if any of you here will start to take ideas from those business models, even though they're very loose at the moment. But they're making it there. I mean, people who are getting 100 subscribers, they're looking at other people in the similar fields, and they're looking at creating partnerships with them, which is, I find, very interesting. And they're actually making it work.
Well, I think
Okay,
that
thank you.
we were talking about, you were talking about tribes, and I think YouTube has a lot of tribes. There's a place for everybody on YouTube, and I think, like I was saying earlier, a lot of young people, that's what, when I ask them what they watch, or ask their parents what they're doing, they're watching YouTube. But YouTube Red is not really doing that well. I mean, the subscription, or whatever, the pay service for YouTube, but just regular YouTube for kids is doing amazingly, so I think it is important to pay attention there.
So we're going to wrap it up. Some rapid fire predictions. Sort of predictions or opportunities or both for the next 2 to 5 years. Where do you see this going, this sector going, and where is there opportunity for people who are content creators, technologists, speculators, investors?
Well, one, I don't think that linear is going to, there's always linear is going to die, whatever, and it's a panel topic. I think linear is not going to go away. We're in New York, LA, and San Francisco, but the rest of the country, the rest of the world, so many people are still relying on linear. But I think, for me, one of the things that we were talking about is with the glut of selection, I think curation, somebody's got to nail that. And it was so fascinating to hear from the people in the music world to talk about, because that, you know, has informed so many things, and I think curation is going to be a big deal.
And we do have some from Spotify here tonight, who sold his company, Soundwave. Is Aiden still there?
Yeah, you left.
We left. Aiden Soundwave, he did finding music, and he sold it to Spotify. So anyway, he was getting a lot of shout outs and he missed them. But anyway, Claire.
For me, it's kind of like, and I always think a bit further out than 5 years, but you know, to Dermot's point earlier about screens, I think screens are kind of all going to go away eventually, and we're just going to be in environments that we can adjust to our own settings, and we'll bring our own settings with us. And the more we have things like automated cars and things like that in our lives, then you know, we'll have way more time on our hands, to be overwhelmed by content, but also to make content as well. So I think that's kind of something that I'm very interested in. But in the short term, voice as a user interface, really excited about that because it's like the clearest thing you can use. You know, I'm sure it can be clunky and horrible as well, but it's amazing to see what Siri and you know, Alexa are able to do now. And then also AOR, it's just, I think this, the democracy of AOR, because it's just on your phone compared to like sticking a VR headset on your face for half an hour is kind of a key.
Excellent.
So I think we're going to continue in the age of enterprise bundling, so acquisitions, consolidation without question. And then we're in the age, obviously, as we've been talking about, of consumer unbundling. So when enterprises bundle, usually the trend is the consumer offering unbundles. So we're going to continue to see that greatly without question. And then I think in terms of voice and audio, I know we're talking about OTT video right now. I think there's still a huge opportunity, and the platform hasn't really been created in terms of storytelling with audio. So we definitely have big players out there. Obviously, the production side's growing greatly. We call it podcasts today, audiobooks, what have you. But just audio storytelling, big opportunity, and a few platforms of distribution today outside of the music platform. So I see a big opportunity there as well. And really, I think then for our own small lens on it, then how do we then take that opportunity that's happening from consumer behavior and enterprise level things and really make it focus for our tribe, our niche, our audience, our community. How we take that down to our 34 million in America, 70, 80 million global Irish diaspora. So that's what we're thinking about.
I think three things. One, you're seeing a massive unbundling, and you'll see a rebundle. And the rebundle will be different services. So you'll see maybe a sneaker subscription bundle with a content service bundle with a music service. Two, there's a huge content bubble, and Netflix are not going to be able to prolong their spend rate, and that's going to collapse. And we'll move off this world of a billion great shows to watch. The third thing that'll happen, because of it, is my prediction, and it's not bode well for you, unfortunately, which is that Netflix will start selling advertising, and Amazon will start selling advertising. And when they start doing that, we have a very bad day for linear advertising. So that's my prediction of those three.
Wow, well, that's a big one. Wait till we see what happens. Well, thank you very much for coming. I think the future is looking bright. There's some, it wasn't doom and gloom, but there's certainly things that saying that they're going to get out there, they're not going to last. But I think the fact that the future is television is really creating more television everywhere. So a big round of applause.